What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and today we are going to talk about the conundrum of you love comics, you want to be a comic creator, but I can't draw. I can't. I don't know. Like I can't make comics. I get these comments a lot. On certain videos, I've gotten this comment. I want to make comics, but I can't draw, or I like to write comics. Can I still make comics because I can't draw and things like that? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But first, let us see where Ronnie Crimson Owl Comics, also known as Ronnie Gunter. Where can we find you, sir?
Hello, I'm Ronnie Gunter, Crimson Owl Comics. You could find me on Instagram and Facebook as Crimson Owl Comics, and soon on my website as Crimson Owl Comics.
Awesome. And there's a link in the description below for him and everybody. Next is Jason Alexander, aka Fogbreaker Studios. How you doing, and where can people find you, sir?
Not too bad. Y'all can find me on Instagram at Fogbreaker Studios. Facebook is Jason Alexander, or I do have a Fogbreaker Studios page. I'm also in Marshall's Discord. That's where I'm the most social. Everything else is more just art and random thoughts, because that's how I get down. But no, I'm Instagram primarily. Fogbreaker Studios.
Awesome. And then we have Mr. Russ, comic book black belt. How you doing, man? And where can people find you?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, doing okay. It's sunny here today, which is nice. You can find me at Comic Book Black Belt on YouTube, or you can get me at russleach.com, comicbookblackbelt.com, or onlydeathcansavus.com. That's my new book, and there's an email subscription list there for you. Also, the usual places: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, et al.
Awesome. And like we had in the last episode, the 100th episode, we're all kind of a bunch of cave dwellers. And Russ, are you gonna get out in that sun, or have you gotten out in that sun at all today?
Yeah. I'll go out and do some training later and go for a walk and stuff.
Awesome.
I've just finished a gig, so time for some downtime.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome. I actually was hearing, recently this whole thing with the virus. They say, hunker down, stay inside. But I kind of feel like it's actually, as long as you're staying away from people, like it's actually better for you. If it's a nice day out, go outside, get some
for sure.
vitamin D, get that.
Vitamin D apparently is a really good defense. So, I'm no doctor, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So yeah, I don't know. I've had this, like I said, I've had this question often, talking about I can't draw, or I want to learn how to draw, but I want to make comics, and I'm so excited. And should we? I guess I'll pitch it to you, Ronnie. Should we let not being able to draw, or wherever maybe we just feel like we're not at the greatest place with our skill that we want to be, should we let that stop us?
Of course not, because all of us, we have our own style, our own take on characters. I mean, you could pretty much tell a story by drawing a comic in a Garfield style or a Jack Kirby style, pretty much giving a take on that. I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, everyone has their own take. How to put it as, I mean, not everyone's going to be able to draw the exact same way. Everyone's not going to have the exact same passion to draw a superhero comic, a horror comic, a romance comic.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I got.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Like there's been people who have made comics out of stick figures. There's been people, Mike Judge made an empire, off of, Beavis and Butthead, which is, I don't know, maybe some people think of that as Michelangelo, but I think most people, see that as kind of amateurish art. I think it's
Right.
meant to be that, so I think it's definitely possible. And not only that, I have a friend of mine, he actually did the 100 Days of Making Comics back when it very, very first started. And his name is Jamie Gamble, and he's a writer. He doesn't claim to be an artist at all in any way, shape, or form. But he's written a bunch of comics and gotten them produced. But he did a comic himself. He drew a comic also, and I think even if you're predominantly a writer, I think that it's worth it, to actually try to draw a comic, just to see what the process is like, and kind of see what your artist is dealing with. And also, it just helps you maybe understand the storytelling in a way where when you write, you can think of those things. Jason, did you wait till you could draw like Jim Lee before you made your first comic?
No, I wouldn't have started yet if that was the case. No, not at all. Once you have a story, if you have a story, or if you're interested in it, just like think of one. If you can make it interesting, man, it don't really matter what your art looks like. Something that I always look to is a television show that it took me straight up years to get into, which was One Punch Man. And it's such a weird concept. Like it's just almost like a spoof of a superhero. But if you look at where that started, like as like these web comics that were drawn, like it looks like on a paper towel with a too heavy black pen. But the story is all there. And if that had never existed, then there wouldn't be what it is now. It's like One Punch Man is on just about all streaming services. The animation is great. And like you said, it's more of a matter of, if you want to run a restaurant, mix it up in the kitchen a little bit. Like, even if you're not a good cook, like get around the kitchen, fill the kitchen out. Because if you ever hire a head chef, or in our case, an artist for one of your stories, it's easy. I mean, and you guys can probably tell just when I get started talking, it's easy for writers to get wordy. It's very, very easy. And I look at some of the stuff that I was writing when all this first started, and it's extremely wordy. But now that I've done both sides of it, or at least have exposed myself to both sides of it, you learn how to be more concise. Like if you're going to give someone something to work off of, be concise. It also makes your writing better if you can figure out how to get things across, a little bit more descriptive some ways and a little bit shorter some ways. Because, everything that you write, if you're like us, like we draw it. So, sometimes I get tired of my writer, because he's super wordy. So I'm learning different things. So it's good to immerse yourself. Skill level is irrelevant, and it's also a time thing. If you do it, you'll get better at it. If you want to do it, then you'll spend time with it, and you'll be better than you thought you were. I don't claim any kind of art skills, but after 2 runs of the hundreds and just drawing every day, I'm way, way, way better than I used to be. And that may not mean much to like you said, like the Jim Lees of the world, but man, I'm awesome now. Like I'm totally happy with how I draw, and I'm only getting better because I stick with it. So
that's awesome.
Do everything. Basically, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I just I totally agree, and I just realized I had this picture on my wall. That's why if you saw me get up for a minute, there's an artist, a friend of mine, and he has worked on SpongeBob SquarePants for years. He's been, one of the many animators in that studio.
Yep.
I don't know exactly what parts he works on or what. His name is Ted Secco. I really want to have him on the show sometime. He's a really fun guy to talk to and very thought provoking type of dude. So, anyways. He, like I said, he's an accomplished artist. He can do some pretty amazing things, but he makes comics on the side, even though his daily, and it doesn't seem like he really does it to like he's not strongly pursuing a career or anything. He just does it because he loves comics,
Yep.
And I love his art when he's making comics. It's so energetic and powerful. And here's some of his art.
Oh wow, look at that.
And I keep this on my wall just because the energy of it, like it's almost like
It's
not
definite,
any much
right.
more like it's not much more than like gesture drawings, but it's powerful gesture drawings.
Yep.
And it's like he kind of draws like almost like with a Sharpie, I think sometimes, and he uses all kinds of different he'll paint, he'll do all kinds of different mediums. But I love his comics. There's so much energy in it, and it's like the guy can draw like really well, but when he makes comics, he likes to do it that way. It's like there's a lot you can do. You don't even have to draw at your full necessarily illustrating capacity. So, Russ, let's bring it over to you. When what would you say to somebody who wants to make comics? But feels like their skills aren't quite there yet. Drawing, should they try? Should they attempt it?
I think the consensus is the correct one. Just get on with it, try it, do it. The point you made there with that artwork and the fact that this guy has so many different abilities and chooses to do something that some people might see as more basic. That's a testament to style. And comic books are all about style. Something that I've learned, something that I've come to mature about. Yes, you want to, with certain styles, you want to make sure you have things correct underneath, and then you can push the boundaries, you can break the rules. But I think any comic book can be done with any style as long as it's appropriate to the story. So, for instance, what you were saying about One Punch Man and where that came from and what have you. I think if you were doing a story that was all about the dialogue, as in the emotion aspect of it, it was all about the interplay between the characters. You could do stick figures; it wouldn't matter.
Nope.
But if you were doing something that was some kind of space opera and required in-depth vistas across new types of planets and places in a far distant galaxy, then stick figures aren't going to cut it, because some of the visuals are actually an integral part of the story that you're telling. So it's all about what's appropriate. It doesn't mean for 1 second that you shouldn't or should do a particular thing, but it does come down to what's the best way to tell the story. So, and that's why along with different approaches to the medium, along with different styles and different skill sets, that's why different artists are chosen for different projects. It's not always get me Jim Lee. Not that you could always have Jim Lee, but it's not always get me Jim Lee. It's that Jim Lee might not be appropriate for your project. Just because he's a fantastic artist doesn't mean it's right for that book. So it does mean that all approaches are valid. It just means that you might need to pick them. And so the answer to your direct answer to your question is just go out there and do it, because you're never going to know until you try. So.
Absolutely. And if you want Jim Lee, there's plenty of Jim Lee clones out there, so you can find yourself a budget Jim Lee.
Yeah. I tried it myself for a while, but it didn't work for me. So,
I definitely totally agree with everybody here. it's pretty interesting. Let's I just want to shout out everybody in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. Feel free to throw in some questions or comments in there. We're going to be going for a little bit. It's not going to be super long, but we'll go for a little bit longer. I see Acid Lace in there, Lawrence Sigu. I don't know how to say that. The anime wants me to shout them out. So here you go. There's your shout out. Thanks for watching.
Morning, Michael.
Michael Hang Art. Also, Russ is saying hi up. So thanks everybody for hanging with us. So the other aspect of this too is, to make comics, you don't necessarily have to be an artist. I think sometimes people get into comics and they haven't researched it yet. Like it's okay. Like they might be younger, or like a lot of people have some preconceived ideas or just vague ideas of what they how they think this thing that they buy at some store like comes into being. There's definitely been the comment from people, people like, oh, you're a comic artist, people make those, like like as if somehow they just appear out of thin air in your store. So there's that kind of thing. But I think sometimes, people might think they can't make comics because they can't draw, but they can write. They don't realize that there's more than one person who does these things a lot of times.
Right.
So you can be just a writer. And, I'll be honest, even though, I have a certain level of skill at drawing, I sometimes there's a few different things that make me sometimes want to be more just a writer. I even put that on Twitter not too long ago. I was like, I have too many ideas. Sometimes I want to just focus on being a writer, something like that. And, sometimes kind of like what Russ was saying, like sometimes my style isn't really the best for something I want to write.
Right.
It might be, want to go in a totally different way, or sometimes I want, somebody who makes better art than me to do it, or heck, I wouldn't be able to do like a Bronze Age style very well. It would look pretty wonky and not
right.
It wouldn't be like, it just wouldn't do justice to that kind of style. I know it wouldn't, because I just don't have quite that skill level. So I would freaking totally be like, hey Russ, how much is your page rate? So there's all kinds of things. And not only that, I've talked about this so many times. A lot of the people I talk to, they do this, do this as their day job. They have a little more time, especially, obviously if they're getting paid, they have more time to do this kind of thing. And I have a day job, a kind of boring regular day job. And, I kind of wouldn't mind having some other people do some art for me, because then I could make more progress with what I'm trying to do, so there's a lot of different things. But Jason, what do you think about, the idea of just being a writer? Have you thought about doing that, or do you want to draw all your comics?
No, what I'm learning about myself is I do love the art side. I'm proud that, I was able to stick with it enough to develop a style, but the end game for me is writing. My art is very individual and I enjoy it, but yes, absolutely. All things said and done, my success is me networking with these different artists that I think are awesome. You know what I mean? And just pumping out stories. And, cause that's where my strength is, and it's just like, even like just around the house, talking to my wife and stuff. She's like, your art has come so far. She's like, but writing is that's your superpower. It's like, you can show up, it's like, me without writing is like Hawkeye without a bow and arrow. It's like, you can go, like, you're an Avenger. Yeah. But what are you going to do when you get there? So I'm yeah, at the end of this all, this does have a huge me as a writer and me networking with a bunch of different awesome artists and getting a bunch of different stuff out, because I like so many different mediums. Like some of my stories I do see more of an anime style. Some of them are more of a traditional comic book style. Some of them are, like you said, some of that, you know, that Jack Kirby style, like some of the superhero stuff I write. I would love to see it in a little bit closer to that Jack Kirby style, but instead of me like tackling all these different styles and pumping out these 40 and 50 and 60 page books in different mediums, like, no. Let me find somebody who's as passionate about the other side as I am about the writing side. And then you start, that's where the magic is. It's like, it's ingredients. I have an ingredient, you have an ingredient, your ingredient might be in a different country. You know what I mean? Like, and then put it all together. And then now we're talking like now this is the impact zone. I don't know. I get giddy over stuff like that, Marshall. I was the wrong person to ask that question too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like that is that's the thing is comics. They're awesome when somebody does it by themselves, and they're also awesome when people collaborate. And I love how you put it, like the ingredients and stuff. Like it's so true. And sometimes one thing that's really cool is when you work with people and you enjoy that process of working with people, the product that comes out is something that is probably better than either of you,
absolutely
imagined, and it's really cool. Allison McClone says, I am for hire if people need art. Alley Cat Comics. So there you go. Like, and that's the thing too, is if you're more a writer, there's plenty of artists out there who will need a writer. And if you're more of an artist, there's plenty of writers out there, or, artists out there who need writers, vice versa. Like, I don't know if I said it right, but there's people you can either collaborate or, always try if you can to hire a person, but I think it's kind of cool too. Like, a lot of times my friends and people I've kind of connected with on YouTube and various social media, it's been very artist centric. It's a lot of what you see here, Ronnie and Jason and Russ, but it's kind of cool, like whether or not you are into like the Comicsgate thing. One thing that's cool that's come out of it is I've noticed there's a lot of writers out there who are becoming more prominent in social media and YouTube and things like that, who they're starting to have more of a presence. And, a lot of the projects that you see coming through doing pretty awesome, is kind of driven by the writer. There's a lot of projects out there that are driven by the writers, and then they'll hire artists and stuff, so, there's a lot of ways to attack this comics thing.
I think
Ronnie, would you say you're more of a writer or artist? Do you ever plan to have something that you write be drawn by somebody else? Or I know you kind of do art maybe more. Am I right? Or
he's all right,
I definitely have a passion on the side that I'll definitely hire people to do my art if I want to focus more on my writing in the future. I definitely have a passion for that, because in the past I had quit on my artwork to focus more on writing plays and stuff like that, because I still love stage acting and all that stuff, because I used to dance and sing on stage. So, I really love writing, and I know I could be shy and quiet at times here on YouTube, but when I get really down into my, craft, that's where I really focus on blossoming in my skills. And, in the Discord, when I post stuff, it really shows that, I take my stuff seriously.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Yeah, I don't know. I think all of us are kind of on both sides of the fence here, but sometimes I wonder if I could make more progress, just trying to see if I could get artists, going for what I write. But it's hard. It's hard to make that transition actually.
Yeah.
It's weird to like say to somebody, okay, you draw it, but at the same time, like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when I write something, I might not have the best vision for the art side of things, or even when it comes to laying out like a page and stuff. Like I think about panels and stuff, and I think, man, somebody either with more experience or with just a different sensibility might be able to tell the story better than I can, even though I wrote the story, you know what I mean?
It's really hard. I mean, when I was in college and I was doing theater arts as a major, after I got done with taking acting, I then switched over to directing, and I had to basically teach these young kids how to do this play. And they're like, how, I'm taking this class. I did a bunch of plays in high school. Who to tell you that you could have to tell me how to do this and how to do that? And I'm like, we're doing a 2-hour play. I have to tell you where to stand, and there's 3 of you in a play. I have to remember all of your lines for the 2 hours, and I did that. I remember all their lines for the 2 hours and all that stuff. It's a hard process to be a director, and you have to go out and get the props and all that stuff. It's
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never done that kind of thing before, but I imagine there's a lot to it, and I like that you keep bringing up the director thing too, because I've actually been thinking about that a writer is a writer. Like we write little words on a page and make a script, but there also is that direction side of it that where you're telling, maybe whether it's through the script or telling the artist, you're saying, hey, in this panel, we really need to convey this specific emotion, or, we need to, there's all kinds of things. Oh, we need, this, and this in that screen. We need to do an establishing shot so that later on, it foreshadows a certain thing later on. Like there's all kinds of things. And we actually have a comment relating to that here. See if I can bring it up. Adam A. I'm primarily a writer, an amateur one at that, but I feel when you have a certain vision, it may be difficult to communicating to an artist. So that's why I'm trying to get better at both. I definitely recommend trying both just for that exact, like, I think you're on the right path, Adam, with that. But, also, Russ, what do you think? Like, because you've been kind of in the artist chair a lot of times working with a writer. What would be like your advice to a writer as far as communicating their vision to an artist clearly so that you can translate that on the page?
Expectations. So what do you expect from your artist? And whether you're a control freak about it as well. So this speaks to the 2 different styles of writing. So you might be a writer that writes down visually every panel and thinks about every, like a director might, and thinks about every angle. Or you might be like Stan Lee, and you might bring that method where you say, okay, these things happen on a page, off you go. And see what comes back. But that depends on your approach to your artist, to the person you're working with. I think what you were saying personally about your specific approach, Marshall, is that what you have on your side is that you can do thumbnails as well. So if a writer really doesn't want to do art at all, is just not interested, or feels like they can't, there is an advantage to being able or practicing on both sides, of having some experience of both sides. So for instance, if you wanted to up your output and say, right, I want to do 10 books a year, but I know I'm never going to be able to draw all those books, but at least you can have some kind of input into the artistic output on that by putting together thumbnails, or the way that you approach the story writing. So like you were saying to Adam, if you can get experience on both sides, even if it's only playing about, it's a good idea. I think that you spoke about Comicsgate as well. Whatever you think about Comicsgate, whatever you think about the current state of the industry, what is happening is opportunity is occurring. And something that I did notice, and this may have something to do with the turmoil that's been created out of the Comicsgate, is that you're right, writers are now coming out of the woodwork, where they seem to think the only way to get a gig was to go to the big two or the surrounding publishers. They're now, because of the way that crowdfunding is working, they're now seeing the opportunity to approach an artist, and instead of just promising on the never never, actually saying, look, if you put sort of 5 to 8 pages together, we go to a Kickstarter and we convince people, then we can have a budget to put a book together. Now, of course, that requires more than just turning up on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. You need to have things like channels. You need to have things like Facebook pages and Twitter profiles, so that you can talk to a possible audience. You can converse with them and convince them that you're here for the long term, and that you want to produce these projects. So that there are opportunities out there, and I think it's favoured the kind of uptick of writers coming out and saying, we're writers, we need artists,
right?
Let's get together, whereas writers, because artists are it's a visual thing, obviously it's easier to get noticed and to maybe go to the bigger publishers. As a writer, it's very difficult. It's even more difficult to get in than it is for an artist to get in, because you can't just impress people with a few pages. You have to have somebody sit down and read it, and then if it's not actually the final thing, like a finished published comic, then it's even more difficult to take the time to understand the script. Right. Whereas an artist can just go, there you go, look at that. Even if it's not finished and published, it's still visual and it's still easy to take in. So I think these opportunities are happening for writers. That's why you see more writers sort of getting their head above the parapet, as it were, and saying, look at me, I'm here, let's put something together. But also, I think there's a coming together of writers and artists in general, outside of the usual hangouts and the usual ways of getting together. And definitely, as we were going back to what we were saying to Adam, try both sides of the medium as much as you can, because I know some writers really are like, oh, I haven't got a clue, but at least, maybe sit down with an artist and discuss how an artist perceives a script, so at least you can get the other side of the other side of the argument, as it were, the other side of the discussion. Because a lot of the time, I have been in situations where a writer is either fresh to comic books or just doesn't talk to the artists, and so really just like spits out all the words and expects it to come back, and that's not going to help you out.
Not the way it works, right?
No, and artists as well, you need to be appreciative of script writers, of writers, and how that works. The best thing to do is to have a dynamic where you discuss and you go backwards and forwards. It's not, either of them shouldn't be in isolation, although that does happen far more often than you might think it does.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like that tip of, maybe try to do some thumbnails and stuff. But even if you don't want to do that, again, what Russ said, that communication is huge, because honestly, even when I write something, like say I write something and it's just like a piece of something and I want to show it to somebody to see, get some feedback, is this good or not? I always run into the problem that there's certain things in my head that I didn't necessarily explain when I wrote, and they can't see what's going on in my head, they can't. So it's like
just as well.
So, it's just, you got to be careful with that, and kind of over communicate even, not to the point where it's annoying, but try to over communicate. A lot of times that can be helpful.
Yep.
So with that being said, it is about that time. I really appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat. with us, and also you guys hanging out with me, making the show so much better. I get tired of hearing my own voice, I think. So, Ronnie Gunter, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and soon to be website with Crimson Owl Comics.
Awesome. I love that name. Russ, Comic Book Black Belt, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me here on YouTube as Comic Book Black Belt, or at my websites, russleach.com, comicbookblackbelt.com, or onlydeathcansavus.com. That's my new book. And there's an email subscription list there. And of course, the usual haunts, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Yes, subscribe to all of these. Jason Alexander, Mr. Frogbreaker Studios. Where can people find you, sir?
Instagram, Fogbreaker Studios, Facebook, Jason Alexander, and also Facebook, Fogbreaker Studios. I'll respond to any of them, but I'm most active on Instagram.
Awesome. And, once again, if you're looking to figure this thing out, the Discord is a great place. Everybody here has at least been there at different times, and it's just a really great place to connect with different artists, writers, and get some feedback and stuff. So you can find that link in the my link tree down below in the description. And you guys know where to find me: DonkeyJawProjects.com, Marsh Comics on Instagram and Twitter. And I did a TikTok the other day. I did another TikTok, so hopefully you can see my progress with Expando there. And hopefully I'll be doing TikTok again, because I do like it a lot. It's just I only have so much time in the day, so but Marsh Comics there as well. So other than that, we will talk to you on the next one, and thank you once again.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye.